Great pleasure for our very first Down Memory Lane to speak to one of the all-time greats. He's a bit uncomfortable of that being called a legend or an all-time great of the Mornington Nepean Football League, but when you play in 5 premierships all up as a coach and a player and 237 games, you're involved with 3 clubs, Berwick when they were in the competition, the Frankston Bombers and also Sorrento. You deserve to be called a legend. But Tony Blackford, as we welcome you to Down Memory Lane, you are uncomfortable with that, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit, especially when you start talking about yourself. But Dan, I hope this story, and we're going to have a lot of different people do it. And obviously, it was good that Glenn said, "Blackers, you do it first. You know, go down memory lane, and then you can start interviewing the people."
You had a great career.
I had a wonderful career.
Any regrets?
No regrets, Dan. I was never good enough to play at a consistent VFL level or VFA level. Back in those days, Dan, we used to have 16 aside, no wings back in those days.
Do you think if they had 18 that you would have played a lot more VFA footy?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I had 3 years down at the Dolphins, and they were wonderful years. We played in a premiership in '89 in the reserves against Williamstown and guys like Ian Rickman, and remember those sort of people? They were strong, well-known and respected VFA footballers.
I still think the Springvale-Williamstown Grand Final is one of the best Grand Finals of all time. My most vivid memory, except for Billy Swan kicking that 60-metre goal to win the game against Springvale, who dominated for 3.5 quarters, coached by Phil Malin, was Barry Round sculling jugs, not pots, jugs at a pub in Williamstown the next day at the age of 39 as he's about to announce his retirement.
Yeah, he was huge, Barry Round, and he had that big chest, didn't he? Yeah. But those days, back in the VFA days, when they had massive crowds and it was a great competition.
And Frankston did pretty well. I mean, you had a good time there. You played 12 senior games and then you decided, OK, I've got a big chance to go and play local footy with the Frankston Bombers, with Sorrento, with Berwick. That must have been great times.
Yeah, probably back when I went back from the Dolphins to Frankston, Russell Shields, Hawthorn Footscray got our senior coaching job, and there was a fellow called Darren Sharp, Stevie Longham, and myself. We came back from the Dolphins. Shane Atkins was another one playing down the Dolphins, and we were able to recruit him. We had some great young talent, and that mixture really helped. Rosebud were the team to beat, and they were obviously the team all year, and they beat us, I think, by 60 odd points sometime in the second semi. They beat us by 10 goals.
So are you confident going into the grand final? Probably not.
Well, what happened that week, Dan, is that week of 2000 in when was that?
91.
Sorry,
yeah.
The year of 91, they beat us by 10 goals. In the second semi, we beat Bombeach in the prelim, and then that week it rained, and Frankston Park was pretty heavy. That suited us.
So you arrived grand final day and thought, this is suitable for Ducks.
We were a chance, and it was a real heavy condition day, and we were able to get the better of them.
How satisfying was that? Compared to Berwick, compared to Sorrento, or because you were coach of those two teams, were they a bit different and more satisfying? But the fact that you beat a team that you were obviously the underdogs against, you must be really satisfied still to this day, 27 years later.
Yeah, it is. And the friendships that you make from back then, you know, the guys that used to play on and against, and they're good distant memories, you know. So 91... wonderful, because the Frankston Bombers hadn't been successful for a long time. I think that was their first senior premiership from crossing from the Dolphins, because what happened was Frankston and the Frankston Dolphins, some wanted to go to the Peninsula and some wanted to stay in the VFA. And that's what happened. They did a split. The guys that wanted to stay in the Peninsula stayed, and that was their first senior premiership after the split.
And the first one, some say, is always the best one, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. 21. I was 21 years of age back then, or 20. Yeah, it was great. It was a great memory, and I still remember it. And I've still got wonderful friendships from there.
Did you think it would automatically happen after that, as a lot of young footballers do? Oh, we've won one, we'll win again and again and again, and was that a bit of a reality check for you?
So what happened then, Dan? It was Division 2, right? And then we had promotion and relegation, like we're back in it at the moment. We went up and played in Division 1. We lost a lot of our younger kids. They went off to different pastures, and then I think we got relegated the next year, yeah.
Would have been tough.
It was tough, yeah. 92, we got relegated.
And how'd you cope with that, going back into Division 2?
Yeah, and then it was hard to find your feet. 93, 94, it was always hard because, you know, you'd always have different sides that come up and are able to take that next step. And, you know, because I think sometimes when you win a premiership, and that's why you've got to congratulate Sorrento for what they do. They keep on winning premiership after premiership, and same with YCW. Some sides, when they get to the top and they win that flag, then that's the pinnacle and sometimes the end of an era for a lot of people.
Did you ever think when you were back in Division 2 you'd like to try and play Division 1? And obviously that wouldn't be with the Bombers.
Yeah, I probably, at certain times, I had some conversations with different clubs. And the great Barry Moore from Pines, I did meet up with him. But I stuck with the Bombers, and we were able to get a great person in the name of Chris Bull to our club. I think we played in 3 consecutive preliminary finals, and we weren't able to get to that next step, and that's when I left at the end of 97.
Is that because you wanted to coach?
Well, in 97... I coached the Frankston Bombers under 19s or under 17s. I coached them and I was still playing. And then at the end of that year, we played off in the grand final. We lost to Mount Eliza. And then the next year, I got a phone call and that encouraged me to go and coach at senior football.
And that was at Berwick. Tell us about your time there.
Yeah, the Berwick Football Club was a great opportunity for me. I went there as a 27-year-old. And look, I was raw, but my playing ability was still quite good, or I was able to be a lot more competitive. I've got some wonderful friendships still at that club. I've got some guys that fish with me, so I catch up with them 2 or 3 times a year. The first year, like Berwick hadn't been successful. I think it was 20-something years since they'd played finals. And that first year we played finals, so that was 98. The next year they reshuffled the competition and it left Berwick in Nepean Division. And then that year we had, once again, some great young talent, but we had some serious senior talent as well. And that year we were able to, I think we lost a couple of games. We played Crib Point 4 times, and we played them in the grand final, and we beat them by 11 points for the 4th time that year. So I always knew going into that game, it's always hard to beat one side 4 times, Dan.
Did you think you were going to be targeted physically, which you were, and obviously you kept playing, it happened late in the game. Was that as satisfying a victory as any victory when you consider that they targeted you, they got you, but at the end of the day, winners are grinners, losers can please themselves time?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, it was a pretty physical game, and there was no doubt that I got targeted from the Crib Point boys and good fellas like off the field. Andy Wiskin, I played under 15 schoolboys with Andy. That's when I first met him, and Lambon and McNabb and the Graham brothers, who were wonderful Crib Point people. And they had a plan, and halfway through the 3rd quarter they were up, so their plan was working.
What was it like though, being a playing coach and knowing that you had a responsibility out in the field, but you also had a responsibility to make sure your players, the rest of your players, were doing the right thing? When, okay, you might be having a bad day yourself and you're saying we've got a lift and you're thinking, well, I've got a lift too. I mean, was that tough at times?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, but I do as I do, not as I say. Just follow me. And at that age of your life, it's a terrific. I think you're well set to lead a club.
And Berwick obviously started having a lot of success. Do you look back fondly on that and think that I played a big part in that?
Yeah, I do. And like I said, every club that you go to, you meet wonderful people, Dan. And the sporting environment, like you've done a lot of stuff in your time, Dan, and the people that you meet along the way, you're not going to embrace everyone. You can respect everyone, and there's certain people that you'll have a friendship for life with.
How did you end up at Sorrento?
What happened to 99, we won the flag. The next year, we played off in the finals again, and that was 3 years. And then I got a phone call to come back to Frankston Bombers, and that was in 2001. So I went back to Frankston Bombers. We played Mount Eliza in a grand final. We lost that grand final, and things didn't work out for me at Frankston.
Why?
Well, there's a few things that I felt people were undermining me.
How?
Just the talk and that behind the scenes, and I did ask for a couple of changes, but they weren't prepared to make those changes. So that was fine. And then I received a phone call from Sorrento Footy Club, and that was the next part of my venture.
Did you feel it was a challenge you needed to take?
Probably. I'd only been away from Frankston for 3 years. My time probably wasn't right to come back to that club, even though we did play off in a grand final. And we led Mount Eliza at half time of a grand final, but Mount Eliza was too strong for us that day. And then the next challenge was the Sorrento Footy Club, who hadn't won a flag in 24 years. They were down and out. They were down and out. I had very good support. Let me go back to just Berwick for 1 quick minute. I had very good support from a fellow called Daryl Nesbitt. He taught me a lot. He coached Sandringham and St Kilda. And then I walked into Sorrento Footy Club, and there was a fellow called Merv Harbiston who played at Essendon.
Yeah, remember him.
Yep. And then there was a fellow called Don Scott.
Remember him.
Yeah, well, so Don... Yeah, and Don... So those two people really helped me as a person as well and as a coach, because they let me... And I was at the end of my footy career at that stage, because my body was starting to let me down and all that sort of stuff. But we had a great ball of young talent, and Don and Merv were able to run the bench, and I just run the football side of things and help. I was the on-field director more so than an on-field coach, if you know what I mean.
Don Scott is seen as one of life's and certainly one of AFL, VFL football's great eccentrics. But he was a pretty good expert commentator. He knows the game well. You don't play 300 games of footy if you don't know the game well.
No, that's right. I mean, Don is Don, right? And Don says it how it is. Sometimes it's brutal, but I think he is a wonderful person in saying it how it is.
Plenty more to talk about with Tony Blackford on our Going Down Memory Lane segment, the first of many. Looking forward to this as a big part of the Game Face Footy Show and Game Face Footy app for the Mornington Nepean Football Netball League. We'll be back with more shortly.
St Andrew's Brewery, using the finest ingredients, ensuring each beer is full of flavour and character.
Back with Down at Memory Lane, the first of them, and Tony Blackford, who's going to be doing the interviews, is being interviewed by me, Dan Lonergan. Now we're at Sorrento, Tone, and Don Scott is the man who's helping you out. Merv Harbison's down there as well. Don didn't have any success as a coach at South Adelaide. They reckon he was too brutal. Do you think being a man behind the scenes is a better role for him?
Look, he is a brutal person, and he does say it how it is, like I said before. But just his knowledge and his understanding of the game is second to none. And he was instrumental on getting Sorrento back to where they were, you know, because he rallied around to be able to get them under 19, under 18 players. They played off in a grand final, and those young kids were the backbone of the next generation.
which is fantastic for the club because it's a couple of hours from Melbourne that they managed to keep all those players. I mean, that's a sign of a good club, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but it was Don's hard work. He'd get a bus and he'd go around and pick all those young kids up.
Now, you talked about support people. You had Daryl Nesbitt, who was a terrific servant in the VFA and the VFL. You mentioned him at Berwick.
Yep.
And you had another Hawthorn 300 gamer who probably is underrated a bit, but what a good player he was, Kelvin Moore at Frankston Bombers. You also had a pretty good player from St Kilda. I don't think he gets enough credit. Everyone gets stuck into him for his quarter on Bob Ketty in the 71 granny. I thought he played really well for 3 quarters, and then Bob Ketty got away in the last 2. I'm talking of the Cat, Gary Colling. Now, you had a couple of outstanding guys there with you at the Frankston Bombers, didn't you?
Yeah, so Cat was there as well. Kel was my chairman of selectors. Cat's 2 boys, Breck and Reece Colling, were both playing at the Bombers at that time too.
What were they like as guys? Were they totally different or were they pretty similar?
Well, Reece is a little bit more subdued and quiet and all that, whereas Breck was a little bit more outspoken and, a bit more, outspoken.
What about Kelvin and Gary as blokes? And did they have different ideas or were they pretty similar as well?
Yeah, very different ideas. Kel was there more because Gary still had commitments at Paran Dragons, the under-18 side. So he was still coaching there. He still coaches school football, but he would drop down on numerous occasions.
Now, Sorrento won the flag in 2004 by 1 point.
Yeah.
Just scraped in.
It was a, once again, talk about grand finals. This day it hailed. Howling winds.
You know how to pick them, don't you?
Yeah, we know how to pick them. But once again, Dan, Bomb Beach were raging hot favourites. You know, they had got some really good players in Gorozides was playing down there, and they had good goal kickers. But we were able to have a youthful side that we feared nothing. We feared nothing.
Is that why you think you won the game? You managed to hang on because you took the attitude, we've got nothing to lose, even though you had a premiership to lose?
Well, we had a premiership to lose, but I think we won before our time, and that was the one we won.
When you say you won before your time, we're seeing this with the Western Bulldogs in the AFL. Everyone says they won before their time, and now they've gone backwards at a rate of knots. You've just got to... If you're ready to go, you take them when you get them, don't you? But is that saying a bit overrated and a bit unfair to say we've won before our time? I mean, if you win a premiership, you win a premiership, don't you? Yeah,
you're probably right, Dan. It was just the youth of our kids, and there was a young kid called Scotty Cameron at the time. He was up against Batsloff and another big, tall ruckman. There was a two-tiered ruck against him, and his ruck work that day was fantastic.
Now, you went back to the Frankston Bombers?
So I spent one more year.
Yep.
Spent one more year at Sorrento in 2005, and that's when my eldest boy Marlon was born in the June. I retired in the September. We played finals again. We lost to Tyab. And then in 2006, I received a phone call from Brett Lovett.
To, of course, go to the Frankston Dolphins. Just before that, you retired as a player in 2005, didn't you?
Yes.
Ian Chappell always said, you know when it's time. Did you know it was time?
I think if we hadn't have lost so many senior players at the end of 2004, I probably would have retired then because my body was gone. But we lost a lot of senior players, so I felt that I needed to stay out there one more year.
What sort of injuries did you get?
Just knees, like I had medial and post, which is the one, so they're not anterior, but just 6 to 8 week injuries. I had osteitis pubis, that held me back for a while as well. But your body just starts to, your mind's still there, but your poor body just keeps letting you down.
Well, as you said, you got an opportunity to be an assistant coach to Brett Lovett with the Frankston Dolphins. What was that like? I mean, Brett Lovett as a player just seemed to be one of those guys that would get the job done. To me, I didn't think he had the personality to be a coach. What sort of coach was he?
He is one of the best astute people that I'd been involved with. I learnt so much off Brett Lovett, but it's an interesting story because I went, and Brett won't mind me saying this, I went and I got a phone call from Brett. Paul Amy rang Brett Lovett up and said, "Paul, Brett, you need to speak to a fella called Tony Blackford." So
he's a ripper, Paul Amy.
Paul, yeah, wonderful. So Brett rang me and he said, Paul gave me your number. Would you like to sit down and have a chat to be an assistant? So I went around to Brett Lovett's house. We sat down there for half an hour or so, and I thought the interview went well, Dan. I thought that I spoke well and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, cut a long story short, 4 weeks went by, 5 weeks went by. I never heard from Brett Lovett, right? The Dolphins had started training, and I think it was 2 or 3 weeks in. And then I received a phone call from Brett Lovett, right? And he says, "Where have you been?" I said, "Well, I've been waiting for a phone call for you to say that I've got the job." He said, "Well, you got the job as soon as you walked in,
But he didn't communicate with you.
No, that's right. So
were you thinking, gee, I'm going to have to do all the talking here?
So it was really good because I think that I'm a good people's person, and we had a great guy in Dickie Cusperson down there as well. And Dickie's unfortunately passed away, but he and I were able to get around and communicate with the boys, whereas Brett was a really good, astute person, and his knowledge of the game was outstanding.
Well, he played 235 league games, so he certainly had plenty of great knowledge. And what did you learn most about coaching in the VFA, or in the VFL as it was then?
Well, the most I learned about with Brett Lovett was just about what went wrong on the weekend. You don't have to have set drills for. You go back and then you work it out on a Sunday, Monday, and you have a training drill that's fit to help with your structures for the following week and where you went wrong.
So you had a good time there. You still felt you had another senior appointment in you? Yeah,
well, I spent 3 years there and we were quite successful. We got to nearly a preliminary final with Frankston. We had guys like Aaron Edwards and Justin Berry and Ash Roberts, and so it was really good. Young Tory Dixon was down there at the time. Marcus Morigliani went on to play at Essendon.
Did you think Tory would make it?
Well, at the time when I was there, Tory was playing a lot of seconds football.
Right.
Yeah, and he had the skunk haircut, but he went on and become a premiership player.
Yeah, Dead-Eye Dick, 2 outstanding years with the Bulldogs. I think that was his strength, wasn't it? His ability to kick a goal.
Wonderful kicking for goals. So, and then 2008, at the end of that year, I received a phone call from a great mate, Chris Sharman.
Stick fat with the bat.
You got to stick fat with the bat because without the bat, this competition might have gone in a different direction.
Why is he so good? Why is he able to get his message across and have so much of an influence?
We wait until you meet him, Dan. He's looking forward to meeting you. And
I'm a bit nervous about that.
No, you'll see eye to eye with the old bat. Anyway, he's a very tenacious little fella and he hates not getting his own way. So he works and works and works until he gets his own way.
And did he have to work on you to have you back? Or because you knew him well, you automatically said yes? I just felt... You know how I said 2001 I was probably a little bit early to go back to my club? Well, 2009 I went back and I'd been away for nearly 10 or 12 years. So it was a good time away. A lot of different people who I played with weren't there anymore, so it's a younger generation, and I think that the timing was right. And I was lucky enough to have Nathan and Ryan come on board as well. Yes, Nathan and Ryan Loney, who'd had AFL careers. Ryan in particular, a couple of grand finals at Collingwood. Nathan as a kid played in Hawthorn's final series of 2001, so plenty of experience. Was emergency in Port Adelaide's premiership. Yes, he was. Yeah. So what did they bring to the table? Oh, a lot. Just that professionalism, and the thing we needed to try and change was probably just a little bit of professionalism in the place. And getting those two boys in, they're another one to say, just follow me, So their pre-seasons were outstanding. And there was a 17-year-old kid who went on to play some good footy at Richmond, unfortunately lost his spot and wasn't in the grand final, so not there anymore. Jake Batchelor. Did you think he was going to make it? Well, he went on and played nearly 100 senior games, so well done to Jake on that. And it was great for us to have him. He was a very talented kid. And he played a role for us in that grand final. So you've won a flag in '99. You must have been thinking, gee, how good's this? I'm back with the Frankston Bombers. Did you feel you were going to dominate again?
We always knew that we were up against it. Sereno were the powerhouse, and they had been for quite a while. And once again, we beat them 1-1, I think it was, in home and away. They beat us in the second semi. We had to go through the preliminary to make the grand final.
And what were you able to change to win the grand final after losing the second semi, considering it was only a fortnight earlier?
Yeah, I think it was a belief. Our belief was strong. We knew that we were capable of beating them. And on that day, it was quite a warm day, Dan, and they kicked with the breeze in the first quarter. And up until three-quarter time, the third quarter, it was hot, and I felt that those hot conditions were really going to make them run out of legs, because they had only played one game in 4 weeks, right? So I felt to our boys that we would be able to overrun them, and we didn't lead at any stage until the 9-minute mark of the last quarter, Dan.
And you hung on from there on?
We won by 30-something points, I think, or 20-something points. So we hit the lead at the 9-minute mark of the last quarter, and then I think we blew it out to 20. I would have to, you'd have to have a look.
When you hit the lead, did you think, knowing that your players had plenty of match conditioning in them, and as you say, Sorrento had one game in a month in them, and it was pretty hot conditions, did you think we're right now?
Well, as soon as we hit the front, we then got another one straight away, and I felt that the momentum had all swung.
How satisfying was it to beat the strongest team in the comp?
Oh, it was very satisfying at the time, yeah. Because, they were the team to beat. They were the powerhouse, and they'd been the dominant side all year. But, you just never know. On that big stage, you just need to be able to execute correctly to get the job done, don't you?
Now, you're in the team of the past 30 years, which was announced in 2012 at the Frankston Bombers, and you're coach of that team. I mean,
Yes.
You were going to get in as a player. Were you surprised you got in as a coach? I mean, I would have thought it was a no-brainer too. Black as he got in as a coach. But knowing you like I know you, which isn't all that well yet, but I just get the impression...
We're getting to know each other.
Oh, we are,
Dan.
which is
Spending a lot of time together.
Well, it is. I don't know whether it's a good thing for you. It's certainly a good thing for me. But you're one of these shy and retiring types who you don't like the publicity too much. But to be named as coach of the team of 30 years from 1982 to 2012, what's that mean to you?
Oh, it means a lot. I mean, that's the club that I grew up with. Started there in '85 as a young kid, and I used to walk down down to Baxter Park or try and find a lift. It was always hard, but and they were a struggling club too at that stage. What they are now is a lot to do with the quality that they've got in and around. I know they've got good direction with Batty at the moment, but they've got some great support staff.
And
they're working class people, Dan.
Would you love to have another crack at coaching, Tony?
Oh, look, I never say never, Dan, but it's got to be the right job. When I stepped away from Red Hill last year, I was only ever going to coach if the right job came up, and I felt that the Sereno was the right job when they came knocking on my door.
Why did you think it was?
Well, because they're a club that I'd been involved with before, and that they were at that stage where they were going to be challenged to come up into the new competition. So that was a challenge in itself. If they had stayed in Nepean, I probably wouldn't have accepted that job.
What was Red Hill like?
Wonderful. Wonderful club. Great group of young blokes. And the unfortunate thing, we were able to play in 4 consecutive finals appearances at Red Hill. And I really feel that, unfortunately, we weren't able to win a premiership up there. And out of all the clubs, that was the only one that I wasn't able to win a flag at.
In a word to finish what has been an outstanding chat with one of the greats, on 2 questions. What made Tony Blackford a great player?
I used to work really hard, Dan, and early days I used to pride myself on my fitness and my strength, and I was always honest with myself, Dan.
That's more than one word, but I'll let you get away with that.
Yeah.
In more than one word, because you won't be able to give me just one word, knowing you like I know you, what made Tony Blackford such a good and successful coach, where you constantly got the team into finals and in many cases got them into grand finals and premierships very early days.
I was a basic coach, Dan. I kept things simple, and a bit like what Yabby Jeans, they've got it, we've got it, and in dispute. Things are never going to change, are they? Like, you got to keep things simple, and I think I simplified things. And in the end, that might have been my downfall too, Dan.
Do you think the game's become, though, too complicated? I mean, you're right. I mean, still today, it's all about winning the footy, is it not?
100%. 100%. That's what it is. And when you win the football, you've got to execute and use the ball wisely and correctly. And then when the opposition win it, you've got to harass and put the pressure on them and make sure that they force the turnover.
Can you remember, off the top of your head, your most inspirational speech? I mean, take away the strategies. I mean, we've all got to strategise as a coach. But when you have, and we've mentioned this on the Footy Show a couple of times, that when you've just got to give some inspirational words to get your team up.
Yeah, I think I can't remember one speech, Dan, but I always thought my pre-planning was really good. I used to work really hard on knowing the opposition and analysing the opposition, and I made sure that my structures and my matchups were spot on.
And you're obviously a great communicator, which helps too.
Well, I hope so.
Best fish you've caught?
A black marlin.
Where'd you catch that?
Up on northern Australia.
Was that the one that's on the Game Face Facebook page, which is almost bigger than your whole body?
Was it? No, that was a snapper. That was caught out here, Dan.
Oh, well, I wouldn't know. I don't really know fish too well. I think I've been out in a boat once and I had sea stick. Tony, I'd love to take me out again and see if I can survive it, but that's your great passion now, isn't it?
Yeah, I love my fishing and I love doing it with my boys, and I love camping and getting away. But I also have got a great love for local football. Local football has been great for me, and I also think that I've been great for local football.
And how do you think it's travelling now?
Well, I think that there's obviously some issues along the way, but that's for another day, I think, Dan.
Yeah, we'll be talking plenty of times on the Game Face Footy Show. It's a great pleasure to chat to one of the all-time greats, Tony Blackford, and he'll be doing all these interviews down memory lane. He knows all the players, he knows all their stories, he knows in a very nice way where all the bodies are buried as well, so we look forward to hearing all those great stories.
And that's right, Dan. Like, over the next few weeks, I'm going to just communicate with different people from different clubs, and we'll just try and go through each club, and then we'll keep rolling again.
Good on you, Tone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.